Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing today? If you all can hear me, I would love to know in the chat how everyone is doing, especially because this is not your regular class. Um, this is something that happens after you've sat for your NPTE and after knowing that you're going to make it, right? Great. And who do we see in the chat? We see Dr. Singh in the chat right here for y'all, um, rooting even after the board. So that's definitely a sign that I think all of y'all are going to make it. We're all here to cheer y'all on. Um, and let's get started. So why did we come up with this webinar? We thought about what our students would need the most once after they've sat for their boards. What is it that would help in that next step while you would be seeking your job, looking for opportunities, looking for things that okay, what's working, what's not working, what should be considered, what should not be considered, and that is why the Career Final Frontier team put together a great webinar to help you through some tips and tricks to see how to navigate through this whole journey of the process after you've passed your boards, right? I know we don't have the results yet. I know y'all just gave your boards yesterday, but I feel like hang in there. And like Dr. Singh always says, that have the manifestation, have the positive attitude, and I think we will get through this, okay? Now let's concentrate on what comes next in this journey. And these are just introductions. We all know Dr. Singh, we all know Derek. I am Vidhi, and your presenters today are Amanda and Katie. They will present themselves and introduce themselves shortly after as they come on. Um, the objectives that we're hoping that we can reach today to is to see how you can write a solid resume. What are the things that should be included in a resume, and what are the things that are not required for you to put in a resume? Understand what are the best ways to negotiate salaries, to prepare for an interview, job interview, or even search how to look for a good job, how to navigate through insurance and billing and all of that, right? Because a lot of foreign trained students, like myself, would have difficulty navigating through insurance, through billing, how to do that, why is it relevant, what are the different codes, and so much more, right? So I think we put a solid presentation together to get you through all of these and get a head start before you get into the world and deal with all of this. Um, this is, we have some questions, believe it or not, but they're not as difficult as your NPT. They're pretty um, simple questions just to know you all, to see where your understanding is in terms of all of these topics that we're going to talk about. And that is why we have these questions. So quickly, let me know in the chat. And this is, again, we're manifesting, right? So you are calling yourself as licensed PT at this point. I just want to know what your preference is. Would you be wanting to work in like an inpatient setting, in an outpatient setting? Are you looking at some specialty? Are you looking at taking your OCS? Quickly tell me in the chat what you all are thinking. Yes, B for me too. I'll put that in too. Nice. There is no wrong answer here. You all know that, right? For once. Nice. So we have a mixed group, which is great because we're covering pretty much all of it. It doesn't matter which facility you try to get in. You're going to gain a lot out of this webinar. Okay. Question two. How confident you are with your job search and your interviewing skills? What do you think? Where do you land? Somewhat confident. Dr. Singh says A for all. That's good. Okay, so we're hoping that by the end of this webinar that you will be able to at least be a A or a B, and gain something out of this. Okay, so Katie is going to take the next few slides and she can introduce herself and get you started.
Thanks. Yes, I'm Katie. I am a pelvic floor physical therapist, and I actually am really excited to do this because I just went through this whole process myself. My family just moved from Chicago to Virginia, so I was in the process of finding a new job. I start Monday, so this is all very fresh. Um, and the good news is, if you are nervous about entering this phase, just remember, we need you. PTs are very short. Um, they're needed everywhere. So really, I want you to, main thing to take away is that you do have a choice in the matter. Okay. So let's dive right in. So we're going to start with that, right? Like reflecting before you write the resume, before you email it out. I really want you to be serious and think hard about what setting, location, what your lifestyle is like, because work-life balance is a real thing and you should consider that. And the thing I like to make a comparison to with job searching the most is it is kind of like dating. I think a lot of times we enter job search and think like everything is on us. Will they like us? Can I be perfect? What are they looking for? How do I emulate that? But really, what I want you to think about is what is the job? What is the employer going to also fit into your life? And is it a good fit? Okay. So when you're doing this reflecting part, you're thinking just as much about that fit for you as you are for the employer. Okay. So what I like to do is do a general search on like Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor for various PT positions and read through the job descriptions. What do you like about that job description? What did you not like about that job description? Print them out, circle, whatever you need to know so that you can really start identifying what some of those top priorities for you are. And then that way, when you are searching more seriously, you have some keywords to search for, and those jobs will then populate. Okay. The other big tip when you're starting writing your resume or anything, start working on your LinkedIn profile as well, because a lot of that information is interchangeable. And especially on LinkedIn, it is easy and you could just link your profile in a lot of job searches at this point, as opposed to necessarily sending your resume right away. So making sure that's updated is really important as well. So I want you to take a moment and reflect then. If you were searching for a job and maybe you've already looked at some job descriptions, what would red flags be in the theme of dating? What would a red flag be on that job description, a yellow flag, or a green flag? Does anybody have any thoughts? And you can just type it out in the chat. Oh, Liddy, can you turn to the next slide? Thank you. Any ideas what a green flag or red flag would be that you would see on a job description? Oh yeah, great. That's a good thing, Autumn. It could be, I mean, I guess it depends. A lot of companies, especially local, like small, um, quote, mom and pop type of places. So if it's like not a big company run, they actually might hire a recruiter to help because they just don't have the bandwidth. So it's not necessarily a red flag if a recruiter is reaching out to you. I would explore it more and see if like it moves to the green flag side or if it's still like kind of a sketchy situation. Yes, mentorship for new grads. Yep, refused. Good. Red would definitely be refused to show you tour. Or red for me would be not letting you talk to other employees, asking them questions, having just some casual chats. Good. Red flag, vague description of benefits. Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, only talking about productivity. Any yellow flags? I mean, that's kind of harder. I understand. These are so good. To me, the yellow ones are kind of like those cliche quotes like work hard, play hard. we want people that can wear many hats, right? No, you are a doctor of physical therapy. Maybe you can do a couple other hats, but like, let's talk about really what your job is. Um, yeah, other red would be any like unpaid opportunity or experience type situations. Good. Okay, these are great. Yeah, you guys know what to look for, what not to look for. Um, oh, high turnover cues. That's a good one for red flag. One favorite question I like to ask is how often do people leave, or what are reasons why people leave, or how long. I ask the interviewer how long have they been at the company. And then if I'm talking to anybody else, I ask them how long they've been with the company. Great. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. So question 3, what is the first step you should take when starting your job search as a physical therapist? What do you think? Let's see this engagement slash um, rollover of information. Yes, reflect on your priority setting. Maybe you want to move. Maybe you want a new adventure. You don't have to just search in your general location. Make a list of all the cities you want to live in and apply to jobs in those 5 cities or whatnot. That's awesome. Okay, next slide. Let's get into the resume writing. Um, we have a great tool at our fingertips now called Chat GPT. So when you are trying to highlight a key skill, that is a great tool to utilize in terms of putting in different things that you've done in your positions in the past, and have it give you an example of how to concise that information down. Okay, because we do want things to be simple and concise and clear. So I like to do all my rambling into ChatGPT and then be like, make this more concise, and then it will. So it'll like basically cut my sentence down in half. So I highly recommend using that. If you're not using it to write your resume for you, you're just giving it your information and then making it make it sound better. Um, the other thing, you do want to keep it to one page. Okay, so there is mixed messages on the internet about, the format, all of this stuff. You need a summary at the top. I would say you don't necessarily need a summary at the top because you can always add a cover letter, or a lot of the online applications asks you to give some sort of input like a summary. So if you are tight on space, I think that's a thing that you can forego. But the one page you should keep too, because your resume is just a snapshot of your experience and what you bring to the table. Um, you do want to highlight very key skills, right? So, specific manual therapy techniques? Are you a specific gait or balance trained? Do you know post-surgical rehab? Do you have experience there? You want to call that out. Also, if there are key skills in the job description, like let's say you are applying for an inpatient rehab position and they are asking for a specific skill, make sure those words somehow, if you have that experience, is in your resume, because they do use applicant tracking systems where they pull key terms from your resume. Okay. So using those keywords from the job posting when it applies to you is super critical to have in your resume. Um, Make sure you showcase all of your experience, especially like your clinical experiences. Um, and even more, especially if you got entry level or beyond entry level on your CPI, then definitely that experience should be on your resume, because that shows that you were a working PT, even before you graduated. So yeah, make sure you have that. We are in a data filled um, profession. So data needs to be on your resume as well. So when you are calling out those key features in different experiences, make sure that they consist of, how maybe you had specifically like 40 patients a week. How much percentage did they improve based on your outcome measures that you've been tracking? So if you can pull any of that data, that is helpful as well. Let's see, other highlights. Again, any specialties, certifications, make sure that's on there. People really like, languages that you speak, just like fun facts type of thing. I have a fun facts one on my resume, and it breaks the ice because people typically start talking about that. So like marathons I've ran, I play the piano. So I put like special skills in like a little corner, which I'll show you my resume. The other thing too, I would say, depending on the type of job, let's say you're not sure 100% if you want inpatient or outpatient right now in your career. You might be outpatient, but you're switching to inpatient, and there's different experiences you have that can be tailored more towards inpatient. Tailor them, like make your resume fit more that way. So like highlight more of those skills for those job searches that you're doing. Okay, I have like 3 different resumes that I do depending on what I'm applying for. Um, okay, next slide is an example of my resume. As you can see, it's not a traditional, I just threw this in here. It's not a traditional format because I really was cutting down on space. So I do like 2-column type of thing. My education, special skills certifications are all on that right side, and then all my work experience is on the left side. There's a worksheet I created here. It's a Google Doc that will make a copy for you. And it'll help you walk through, like work out some of the key information that we've talked about here. All right, let's do another question. I'll make sure that's linked in the chat too, so you guys can get that copy. Okay, this question now. Which of the following best describes a strong professional summary for a physical therapist resume? Yeah, great. Yeah, B would be right. I mean, it is the longest option, but it gets to the point, right? It talks about their past experience, what their specific skills are, and what they hope to accomplish in this next phase of their life. So, yep, just kind of kick those off in a very clear professional way. All right, I'm going to pass it back. We're going to talk about negotiations and money.
Thank you, Katie. That was amazing. How do you all feel so far? So far, so good. Let me know in the chat. Do you think it helped to see how we can build a good resume? What needs to be there? What does not need to be there? Yes? Okay. So this is a little bit about, this next section is about salaries, what to expect, what to ask for, what are the negotiating points, and how do we actually go about this, right? What does sound like a good paycheck? I would say the main thing um, is to see the whole packaged compensation than just your biweekly paycheck, because there are a lot of other benefits that you get from your work, your insurance, your continuing education, your ability to grow professionally. All of this is, and you are entitled to all this. So make sure that you're considering all of this together when you look out your 401k. All of these things are important. They might not be important immediately, but they do make a difference in the long run. So if you are thinking about having a better, so to speak, um, package altogether, not just in a short 6 months, 8 months time, but a good foreseeable future, then I think a good package is where you see where everything is included and not just what you get paid bi-weekly or monthly in some states and companies and organizations. Okay, so the main points that we want to keep in mind in this case is doing your research and knowing your worth. The research will tell you what it is like and what is the payment in that facility, in that county, in that state. Different states, different counties, different organizations, different settings and facilities will have different pay rates. Why are they so different, right? Because the reimbursement rates are different. You're getting paid because the insurance pays the organization. in most of the cases, unless it's a cash-based organization, right? So you have to understand that your salary is based off of what the insurance reimbursement is in that state, in that organization. Sometimes it's different, because I know many big organizations are now having to make contracts where those contracts are specific to the organization. That means that insurance pays differently to that organization's visits and organizations say bills versus the others. So I know this is a little more information right now, but it is important for you to understand. So if you're going in an organization which is a small family-owned organization in a small um, like county with not many people, their reimbursement rates are not high, which will reflect what your salary would be, right? So if you are looking at something, look at it in a whole scenario, than just looking at why am I not getting paid more or why is there no money, right? Facilities have different pay rates, states have different pay rates, and the supply demand ratio also changes how well you're getting paid. Now, with that, if there is a high turnover, you don't want to go there even if they're paying you more, because guess what? That means you're going to be put under a lot more pressure. If anybody, if any organization is paying you suspiciously high than all your other 5 jobs that you've applied for, please try to go a step ahead into seeing if there is an issue there and why they're paying you a little bit higher. The bottom line is 5,000 extra dollars is nothing on your paycheck on a bi-weekly basis. So make sure that you choose peace over 5,000 more dollars, and do the math. Okay. Highlight your unique value, what you can bring to the table. I don't want new grads to feel like you cannot empower yourself, letting them know what you contribute, what you can bring to the table, what you can contribute to the success of the organization, the team, um, your seniors, right? Because even though you're a new grad, understand that you bring in the fresh knowledge. What your experienced PTs or experienced PTAs or your managers studied in school 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago is not what they're teaching now. You learn much more than what anybody that's working there did a couple of years ago, right? So that is what you bring. Your value is always increased and not decreased by you being a new grad. So try to have that mindset and come from that um, background. It's not being overconfident, but it's at least knowing what your worth is, right? How would you else know what the worth is, right? New grads bring in a lot of worth than not, I would say. Consider, like I said, the whole package, right? Salary isn't the only thing on the table. Be ready to negotiate or at least ask about what they're offering in terms of benefits for continuing education. Most states will need that, right? You need that budget, you need that added. You don't want to pay for it by your pocket. What is the productivity bonus? Do they have a flexible schedule? What is their PTO like? Is there a difference between PTO and sick time, or is it all included in your PTO? What is the expectation for your caseload? How much do they expect in terms of productivity? I know organizations, and I'm going to bluntly tell you this, that do not pay you your told salary if you do not see X amount of patients. So ask this before you start that job, right? If there are any growth opportunities, how are they like supporting your growth? What is the career path looking like, right? You want to know all these things ahead of time. Be gracious but direct. All of these things said and done, you are absolutely wanting to be kind and gracious and respectful, but there is no problem in being professional and direct. Do not be afraid to ask the questions that you deserve to ask to make sure that you make the right choice, right? Um, all in all, practice your interview, practice your pitch with a mentor, with a friend, family member. You can sign up with us, one of the mentors, if you want to have more tips and see how you want to do this, but practice it so that you don't A, look underconfident, or B, look like you're coming from a place of attitude or that you don't need the job as much as they need you. We want to keep a nice medium between the two, so that there is definitely more perks of you getting what you deserve.
Alrighty, so hi everyone. Before we quickly get into this question, I'll just quickly introduce myself. So my name's Amanda. I currently am a outpatient physical therapist in Boston, Massachusetts. And kind of like Vidi said in the beginning on that opening slide, an area that I like to dabble in, my niche area is dance medicine. So that's just a little bit about myself. But now let's get into this question. So question number 6, again, these aren't meant to be scary. These aren't right or wrong answers. They're just more of a, kind of getting to know and learning about this stuff. So when researching a job's compensation, what are factors to look out for when interviewing? So put those answers in the chat. Great. And I'm seeing all E's so far, which is amazing. That's perfect. Exactly like Vidi said, we want to look at state of practice, reimbursement, continuing education, as well as productivity. All right. And then let's go to question number 7. So what are the best ways to incorporate compensation into the interview process? So A, blend in with the crowd. B, be gracious but direct. C, don't practice your pitch. Or D, don't ask and wait till after you sign a job contract. So I'm seeing unanimous B, which is perfect. Again, like we talked about, you don't want to blend in with the crowd. You want to make yourself stand out in the best way possible. You want to show what is uniquely you about you. Definitely practice your pitch. I'm going to definitely dive more into about all of the interview tips and tricks, so stay tuned for that. And then again, you don't want to wait till after you sign that contract. You want to ask everything before. All right, so let's get into the interview tips and preparation section. So this is something that I really enjoy doing heading into interviews. I have had the pleasure of, both being the interviewer, like myself as a role that I held during undergrad. So I was a physical therapist aide at my university's physical therapy clinic, and I was the lead aide, which meant that I was able to interview all of the aides that were coming on. So I have done a lot of interviewing, but I've been the interviewee myself. So these are just some things that, I've learned kind of tried and true over the years. So the first thing is going to be company research. You want to make sure that you go on the company's website. You look for a mission statement, so you can make sure that you weave that in throughout your resume if they require a cover letter, as well as your interview answers that you'll have prepared. The objectives, most companies do have like an objective statement or like objective section. And just like at the top of your resume, where most of them have like an objective statement, you want to make sure that, again, like it can change for every company a little bit differently, but you want to make sure that it at least touches on that company's objectives somewhere in your resume or somewhere within your objective statement. The specifics of the company too, you really want to make sure that you highlight and you find a lot of the company's details and you add them in throughout your answers. So, the interviewer really thinks, this individual has done their research, they've taken their time, they've looked through our website, they've seen what the company's all about. Now they're here and they're ready to, learn more about you, and you're ready to learn more about them. Just like Katie was saying, it's like dating. It's a two-way street. So that's when we get into the question preparation section. So we want to make sure that you have a list of potential questions ready that the interviewer may ask you. Now, basically how I do this typically is I try to think of a list of questions that, most likely there's the standard ones that companies will ask, but then there'll be some other like more random ones that you may not be able to anticipate. And you almost want to have these like pre-written out or pre-rehearsed in your head. So when the interviewer does ask you these questions, your answers just kind of like flow like out. The thing that I always try to remember is, yes, it's just a conversation. It would just be like talking to a friend, talking to anyone else. But at the same time, too, it has a little bit more of a weighted pressure to it. So classically, they'll always ask, like, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What made this job in particular stand out? Because they know most likely that not only are you applying for them, but you're also going to be applying for other jobs at the same time too. What motivates you as a clinician? why should we choose you? That is the question that has the most weight to it for most individuals. And sometimes people ask you right off the bat, why should we choose you? Sometimes interviewers will also ask, and this could easily be dependent on any setting or scenario we're working in, but like they could give you a case scenario and they might want to see your clinical like reasoning, your judgment, how you would handle a situation. So that would be a time that honestly you can't really prepare for that question. And then the loaded question of, do you have any questions for us? Now I would make sure that you at least have 5 questions for them ready and prepared. Obviously we've been talking about some of these already, but you want to make sure that you have at least 5 of them. You can ask questions like, what is the company culture like? Or you could ask questions about like, we were talking about the retention rate before. All of those are easily ones, able to be asked. Now, if there's something that you think of mid-interview, and just put that in the back of your brain, save it for later. You can always come back to it. Just as much as, you want them to want you, they also want you to want them. So remember, it's a two-way street. It's not all one way. And then when we're practicing all of this at home, it kind of depends on like who you are comfortable working with, or, honestly talking yourself into a mirror. So when I was preparing for one of my clinicals during physical therapy school, it was a application based. So I had to go through a cover letter, a resume, and then a phone interview. I wrote all of my questions, and then I practiced the phone interview with my parents. I practiced the phone interview with my aunt, who's a rheumatologist. And then I would walk around the house looking at myself in random mirrors that I could find. And I would just practice my questions over and over and over and over, so they would just flow right off my tongue. So that is going to be our first section, talking about interview tips and prep. So Vicky, can we go to the next one? Perfect. So now, because we live in a day and age where we can do things in person or we can do them online, this is very different compared to how it used to be, at least we'd say 5 years ago, pre-COVID. So in person, things to consider about. If you're going to a new location that you've never been before, and let's say you're gonna take a public transportation, you're gonna drive yourself, you definitely want to take a test drive to make sure that you feel confident, arriving to this location on interview day, because the last thing we want is to arrive late because, we made a wrong turn or the GPS cut out. So taking that test drive is crucial. And then again, when we're in person, outfits regardless should and look the same in person, but online. But in person, they see all of you from head to toe. So again, when it comes to outfits, which we'll go for kind of both, you want to make sure that you're dressing the part. So most people, when they think of interview, at least this is what I used to think of too, a button-up shirt, a suit jacket for guys, pants and, dress pants and, a belt, shoes, dress shoes. And that's a really good point, Viddy, in the chat. Yes, arrive early. I would say like the rule of thumb is on time is late, early is on time. Rather be there 10 to 15 minutes early no matter what, because then they'll know too that, moving forward, you'll be a reliable and responsible worker that will show up on time. And that's, one good thing in your belt already there. So back to the outfits. So outfits, at least for what I did, now Viddy and Katie can totally chime in on this in the chat too, but at least what I did for my job interview for outpatient ortho is I did a polo shirt. I did a pair of, nice clinical, my work pants that I wear, tennis shoes, and I put like a little, like a zip up jacket that I had. Now, again, this is going to vary from company to company. It's going to vary job to job. But that's at least what I did for my outpatient ortho job that I have right now currently. And then with the online aspect, you want to make sure that your Wi-Fi has good strength. You want to make sure with, the lighting, the background, the camera. And again, these are all good things even to take a look at like right now. So even my screen, I've got lighting to the right of me. What I would say, if anything, is I prefer that the lighting was coming in front of me to make sure that my face was lit up well. I'm talking directly into the camera. I'm not staring off to the side of my screen, and I'm making sure that my laptop is at a good height or computer is at a good height, and that they can see me. Again, when kind of going back to the outfits, they could potentially ask you to stand up. They could potentially to ask you to demonstrate something. I've never been in this situation before myself where they've had me do this, but again, you just want to make sure that you're dressed for success, and you also want to make sure too that you have whatever, system that they use, whether it's Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, downloaded on your computer. You've tested that out as well, whether you make like a fake meeting with a trusted friend or a colleague to make sure that your system is running all accordingly. We can go to the next one. So now we're going to get into a question. So again, kind of like we were just talking about, different organizations, different companies all do things a little bit differently, but based on what we were just talking about, which of the following outfit options should you most likely wear to an interview for an outpatient orthopedic setting? Okay, I have a C. I have another C. I have a definitely D. David says, so wearing a tuxedo is out of the equation. I think so, David. I mean, you would rock a tuxedo, but I don't know. Vinny says B or C. Yeah, B is totally plausible too. So again, B or C is great. A, a little bit too casual. D, a little bit too sports like working out, but great work everyone so far. And then we're going to go to question number 9. So these are a little bit more lengthier on purpose. So this question number 9 says, an interviewer asks you, what are your weaknesses? Which of the following responses would you most likely give? So our first response would, and I'm going to want you guys to kind of hear these out loud just to hear how the differences sound. So the first one says, I'm super shy initially when I meet people, and it hinders my ability to build rapport with patients. I tend to just ask the questions I need to find for the evaluation, and I'm not sure what to ask more about. What did you say, Biddy? Are there questions even after the NPT? Yeah, there are questions after the NPTE. Surprise, everyone. B is I don't really know. I haven't thought of the questions before. Question C, or answer C, says, I have been told I am initially shy when I meet people by my previous clinical instructors. A way I have been continuing to actively work on the weaknesses during initial evaluations to ask the patients one question about themselves that does not pertain to physical therapy. Whether it's about their kids, hometown, favorite food, etc., it makes patients feel more welcome in the clinic. And then option D is, I don't have a single weakness. So what do we think would be the best response here? C. C is a perfect one. So weakness is a tricky one too. And weaknesses, you definitely want to make sure that you rephrase it in a way where the employers understand that, I have a weakness, but this is how I'm working on to improve it. It shows as well too that you're willing to grow, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to make yourself the best clinician that you can possibly be.
Okay, back to me, and we're going to discuss about insurances. I know there is can be a lot to take in, and guess what? You don't have to remember it all. We're here to record this, and this recording will be online on the course page of Career Funnel Frontier in 48 hours. Okay, this is free to anybody, so you can actually watch it anytime. So don't feel like you have to like take it all in and remember all of this. Okay, so insurances, they're different a little bit in every state. Depends on which state you are in. Federal insurances are the kind of the same in every state, but like otherwise it differs from insurance from state to state. Okay, what would you think that insurance would play a role in? Do you think insurance has the ability to decide whether your patient gets continued care or not? Just like a question. Do you think the insurance decides or can decide or have the ability to decide whether you can continue to treat your patient or not? Can I get like a yes or no in the chat? Yeah, I'm going to tell you the truth. The sad truth in the matter is, as much as you'd like them to not interfere, they do. Sometimes your explanations are not enough. They've given you enough visits. Sometimes you can say everything you want and they still deny you. So yes, it's a yes and a no depending on the situation, depending on the case scenario, depending upon the diagnosis. So it's very important to know your insurances, to know how to navigate through them, and to know how to get the best for what is best for your patient, right? Different scenarios in different facilities will need different kind of documentation. Inpatient skilled nursing facilities have a little bit more documentation in detail versus outpatient. I'm not saying that outpatient does not have detailed documentation, but just in comparison, that you will have to be a little more detailed for an inpatient or skilled nursing facility versus an outpatient setting. You want to make sure that whatever you're prescribing is skilled services, right? If you are prescribing a lot of therapeutic exercise, that is not skilled. If your notes are showing a lot of therapeutic exercise in continuation from start to finish, in the middle, everything, that's not skilled, right? Skilled is when you are involved and you have to be involved in a patient's care. So make sure you know what the skilled services are and how you're making this look like it's skilled. That's when you'll get continued cooperation from your insurance for visits approval. Insurances have their own guidelines for compensability. Some diagnoses are compensable for some insurances. Some insurances won't take something. Usually, organizations do a pretty good job at letting you know because they want to get paid. So they let you know ahead of time. They let you know the changes. They let you know everything. But there's a general understanding that you're supposed to have about the insurances as well, so that you can bill smoothly. State versus national, federal insurances are different. An example for Massachusetts would be Mass Health. Mass Health is the state insurance that we have. Now, the cutoff here also is that since it is a state insurance, it is not available to everyone and it only has X number of visits allowed for outpatient setting. Beyond that, you have to ask for more visits and have really plausible paperwork to be able to get more visits. Otherwise, you're not getting paid. So all of these limitations, guidelines are different from state to state, from insurance to insurance, okay? While you're not supposed to know those before you start your job, as you are on the job, you are expected to learn that on the job. State insurances are cheaper and are only available to people earning below a certain annual salary, okay? Amanda's gonna take.
Hi, sorry. I was just responding in the chat just about the Mass Health. And yeah, no, I 100% agree with Vinny and what she says. Like, you want to make sure that you are proving that it is skilled, which we'll talk about here more with the Medicare and the Medicaid, is that we really want to make sure that all of our services are skilled 100%. So first, let's talk a little bit about Medicare. So with Medicare, Medicare is a federal health insurance program that covers a wide range of services to keep adults healthy as they age. So typically this is intended for older adults, but it can also be used for younger individuals with disabilities. So there are 4 types of Medicare. And so the 4 types of Medicare are Part A, which is the hospital-based insurance. Part B, which is our outpatient insurances, which is, as an outpatient orthopedic physical therapist, that's what I deal with on a daily basis when I have a Medicare patient. Part C is a voluntary private insurance, and then Part D is private prescription drug insurance, but we don't even have to worry about those. So like we're just talking about with reimbursement, and there's a lot of good information going on in the chat about reimbursement too. Like Katie was saying, get involved with APTA, as those are our individuals that helps us push for our reimbursement. So reimbursement means it's private health insurers or public payers may reimburse the insured for expenses incurred from illness or injury, or pay the provider directly for the services rendered. So a good example with Medicare is that Part B. So Part B is our outpatient, which is what outpatient orthopedic will fall under. So Medicare covers 80% of the providing services, whereas the individual, so the payer, which is the patient, is responsible for 20% of those services. So then when it comes to visit limits, as well as the importance of progress notes on our daily notes, like Vidya was just talking about before too, is that there's a certain number of visits that are allotted from these insurance companies. You want to make sure that you're using your visits wisely with your patients, and you want to make sure that the skills we're doing are, like the skills that we're doing and we're performing on a daily basis are medically necessary. I like to think about Medicare patients in a certain way sometimes too. Like, you may have 80-year-old dear Mrs. Smith who loves to come in to get her hot pack, her massage, do her 4 activities, and then have a cold pack and leave. If insurance and Medicare sees that we're doing the same thing visit after visit after visit, there's going to be less likely, progress shown and progress to be shown to the insurance that, hey, Mrs. Smith is improving, she's doing better, and we're making these gains to hopefully not have her come back to physical therapy, or need another, like a surgery, God forbid, if she takes a fall. But if they start to see that we're repeating the same things over and over and over, there's less likely that they're going to allow more of those visits for Mrs. Smith. And now when we start to talk about Medicaid, so Medicaid is a public health insurance program for people with limited income and resources, regardless of age. Like Vidya talked about, it's a joint program of federal and state government. So for Mass, we have Mass Health. Those individuals are given a 20 visit limit just based on the insurance that we have. And so, yeah, Vidya, definitely a red flag for those patients. So for Medicaid, we want to make sure that when it comes to reimbursement, so again, reimbursement is going to be based on a fee-for-service schedule. And so that means that the CPT codes used during those treatment, that's what's going to be reimbursed. And so again, we're dealing with the insurance, and then we're dealing with the payer and the patient. Determine, how much is that insurance going to cover and how much is the payer or the patient responsible for. And then same thing like I just talked about Medicare, the same things applies for Medicaid, just like I put in the chat before too. Medicaid, especially for us in Mass Health, requires a ton of paperwork if we want to prove that our patients need more. The company that I work for currently will kind of give us an alert, and it says, hey, you need to submit this paperwork in order for so-and-so, this patient to come back and get more visits. I then end up having to halt care because if, let's say, I let that patient repeatedly come in over and over and over and those visits aren't covered, we run the risk that, the visit wasn't covered in the long run. And now the patient is fully responsible because then the health, Medicaid would view that it was unskilled care and it wasn't medically necessary.
Okay, so now that we know a little bit about insurances, a little bit about how to navigate them, a little bit about who's who, it's time to talk about billing, right? The simple billing rule for any facility, any setting is the 8-minute rule. And I'm sure everybody's heard that, right? The difference is time-based versus service-based codes. Like for time-based codes, the billing is counting the total minutes. So you count your total minutes and then you divide it by 15 versus the service-based codes are not counted by total minutes. No matter how many minutes, the service-based codes remain the same. They're all one unit, right? So you want to make sure that you're aware of that and you're using your codes effectively. I feel like for most organizations and most softwares that they use for documentation already include the 8-minute rule in there so that it pre-populates your billing time and shows you as according to what you put for each activity, how many minutes you put for each activity. So it gets a little easier Some softwares are not built up that way and they need you to actively count those. But again, in either those situations, I think more so you'll have support knowing how many minutes. Just make sure that you're following the 8-minute rule, that you know the 8-minute rule. This is also important for you to have as something that you know during an interview, right? If somebody asks you, if you're a recruiter or you're not the recruiter, I guess, but the clinical staff or your manager, or somebody asks you, how do you know how to bill? What is an 8-minute billing rule? That you're aware of how to do that, that you're aware what is a time-based versus a service-based code, and that you're aware that how are these two different from each other? How does that affect your billing? These are some other forms of insurances, and I think we covered most of this. The only two things that I think we haven't talked about is motor vehicle accidents or no fault cases or workman's comp. They do also have their own set of guidelines and rules depending upon the company and organization for the workman's compensation and your car insurance for motor vehicle accidents. There are guidelines that you're supposed to follow, and they're only those guidelines will be accepted in your documentation. So say an example is, if your workman's comp patient has a script from the doctor saying neck, shoulder, and leg, but workman's comp is only approving neck and shoulder, and they're not going to include the leg, because when the patient first complained about their pain, they did not mention the leg or the fall or whatever happened, the injury at work. You cannot include the leg even if the doctor has it on the prescription. Does that make sense? Or even if the patient comes and tells you, but my leg is also hurting. So yes, these are a few more like detailed things that we're talking about, but you will learn it on the job. These are good things to know before. Like I said, these things help you in an interview. Knowing gives you like a front foot of knowing things. Makes a good impression and makes you less intimidated while you're, say, at the first day. I know my first day of my job, I had a workman's comp case, and I didn't know how to navigate. So I feel like I try to include all of this as a heads up that this is coming, and it's not a lot. You certainly learn a lot as you go, but these are good things to know, and it doesn't hurt to have information. I think it gives you a great set of things to know and makes you less intimidated and feels more prepared.
All right, so another question. So question number 10, which of the following descriptions most likely describes the main differences between Medicare versus Medicaid patients? Let's drop the answers in the chat once we are done reading the options. Anyone? Any takers yet? That's okay. Take your time reading. No rush. All right, there we go. We got lots of A's coming in. Okay, perfect. You guys are doing awesome so far. So yeah, so A is going to be our best answer here again. So A is Medicare helps adults stay healthy as they age, whereas Medicaid helps people with limited income and resources. Great work, everyone.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so let's talk about that skilled care that has to be documented to, get paid pretty much. So those are where the CPT codes come into play. CPT codes technically is current procedural terminology. So they're 5-digit codes that identify the medical procedures or services being done. Okay, so every medical procedure uses some sort of CPT code. That's how billing is done to categorize it. For physical therapists, these are mostly used to describe the evaluations or interventions performed during that patient appointment, okay? Typically, you want a mix of them. It's not awesome to just have one, or at least I should say, it's good to just make sure that you're really aware of what you're doing is being billed under the correct CPT code. Not everything is a therapeutic exercise. And so that's what these are. Typically, you don't need to have these code numbers memorized. They usually are part of whatever EMR system you're using, but you do need to know the description and title for each so that you know what you're doing makes sense under that CPT code. So the next slide was that was the interventions on one slide, and then the evaluations on another slide. Because there's for evaluations, you can have low complexity to high complexity, okay, and then the reevaluation too. So a lot of times in outpatient, mostly you're seeing the low complexity evaluations, right? They're people walking in, they just have like one comorbidity, one thing happening. But maybe in inpatient or rehab, you might see more of a moderate or high complexity, and those get billed at different rates because they're more complex. So yeah, so next slide. I like this next one to do because I think it's just a good way to make sure that there's a clear understanding of what example of exercises fall under each of these CPT codes. So what would be a therapeutic exercise versus neuromuscular reeducation? So in the chat, let's start with therapeutic exercise. You guys want to shout out some examples of therapeutic exercise? City, I don't know if you want to type into it or if people just want to write on their own, whatever is easiest for you. Passive range of motion probably would be, I think, under somewhat manual therapy because you're being passive. So the physical therapist is manually doing it. But yes, stretching could be a therapeutic exercise. If the PT is doing the mobilizing, like if you're talking about like a grade 2 mobilization, that would be under manual also. Yeah. Give me specific, what is a strengthening exercise? Well, therapeutic exercise. What is a strengthening exercise? Is that just walking? I mean, I'm using muscles to just walk. Lunges, good. Lunges. Yeah, long arc quads. Supine bridges, great. Yeah. You're working on strengthening specific muscles. Action is happening. It's not passive. Okay. That would be therapeutic exercise. Now, what would be different than for therapeutic activity? Does anybody know the difference between therapeutic exercise and therapeutic activity? I'll give you a good example. So therapeutic activity, I would like to think more functional. Okay. So therapeutic exercise could be squats, but therapeutic activity could be sit to stands because you are practicing going from sitting to standing and using that muscular control to do this very functional activity. Yeah. Any like ADLs, chair to bed transfers. Perfect. Yes. Anything that relates to a task. Good. No, I know. That's why we're doing this because eventually you are going to be in the clinic soon again. And this can be your cheat sheet to help you remember so you get back into the swing of things faster. Okay, so now for gait training, isn't walking part of gait training? So couldn't that technically be therapeutic activity too? So how would gait training be different than some of therapeutic activity? What could be more specific that we'd want it to be under gait training? Okay, assistance level, I like that. Yeah, because you could be more mod A, you know, you are working on a particular part of the gait. So maybe you're just working on stair climbing, but the descent and that eccentric control going down a stair. So you're really working over and over again about that gait, or maybe a heel to toe kind of walk. Assisted device training, perfect. Yes. Assisted device training 100% would be under gait training. Break down the gait, certain parts. Yep. You're really training them and teaching them the parts of the gait when you are billing under gait training. If you are just working on endurance of gait, perhaps, or yeah, testing, you know, their speed or well, improving speed could be gait training too, but therapeutic, it could also be billed under therapeutic activity when you are just like working on that functional part of improving like their speed or maybe how many steps they're climbing. So I'm trying to get you some good examples of how some things can fall under multiple CPT codes. It just kind of depends on the goal of that activity, what you're working towards, and where they're at in their progress. Okay, neuromuscular reeducation. What would be some examples for neuromuscular reeducation? What's another way that we could say neuromuscular reeducation? Yes, I like balance, PNF. Yeah, balance, proprioception, all of that would be neuromuscular reeducation. So what's some balance activities that you could do? You have a patient coming in, they can't stand on one foot. What are you going to do with them? What kind of exercises could you give them to help improve their balance? One leg stance. Even before that, they can't even do that yet. What could you do before that? Semi-tandem, tandem, narrow base of support, weight shifting, beautiful. Maybe some perturbations, right? Like maybe they have a narrow base of support and you're giving them a little bit of a nudge, see if they can like recenter themselves in the parallel bars, of course, with a gait belt, safety, safety, safety. Yes, eyes open, closed. Great. Okay, good job. Hopefully this gets you a little bit more in the mindset of not everything is therapeutic exercise. We are doctors of physical therapy, so we should be billing as such for the wide range of knowledge that we have. Yeah, you guys are crushing this. And now you have a good tool base to go crush it in the clinic when you get that pass screen. All right. Good job, everyone. I'm going to pass it back over for the last couple slides here.
Alrighty, so let's do a question together. So a little bit of a trick question, so I'm going to give everyone ample time to think it through. So a physical therapist bills the following CPT codes. So we have 1 unit of therapeutic exercise. We have 2 units of therapeutic activities, 1 unit of gait, and 1 unit of electrical stimulation. So how many total units versus timed units would the physical therapist most likely be able to bill for? All right, let's see if any takers in the chat. And if not, that's okay. I can totally talk it through and explain it too. But I'm going to give everyone time. Do we think it's A? Put a yes or a no. Yeah, okay. We have a couple B's. Yeah, we got B's. Good job. Yeah, good job. Okay, I'm seeing the majority B's. Yes, so B it is. So how we got to B is that as I was counting out in the beginning of that question, so we have therapeutic exercise, which is 1 unit that we're billing for. We have 2 units of therapeutic activities that we're billing for, and 1 unit of gait. Those are our timed units that we're billing for. Electrical stimulation is a non-time, so an untimed bill our untimed code. So that means in total, we would have 5 units total, but we really would be getting only 4 timed units out of it. So great job, everyone who selected B. Again, this will come with practice. I promise you guys, this took me at least honestly, a good 6 to 8 months into working to truly understand, process it. You'll hear clinical instructors or physical therapists say all the time, once you get in the clinic, once you're billing constantly, you'll know the numbers like the back of your hand. If someone would have asked me a couple years ago about oh, how many units would you get with 25 versus 45, I'd be maybe this. But now, because I do it day in day out of my job, it's second nature. So I promise you guys, this comes with time, but awesome work so far.
Oops, sorry. Sleeping on the job. Okay. No reason for that. Okay, let's do this last question. A patient is working on tasks such as lifting, carrying, and reaching to improve their motor control and endurance. Which of the following CPT codes would be most appropriate for this treatment? Don't worry, the numbers match up. So really think about, is it therapeutic exercise, neuromuscular re-ed, therapeutic activity, and manual therapy? Yes, we're getting a lot of C's. Great. Yes, C's it is. So we want it to be functional. There's motor control involved, balance, and endurance. Great job. Okay. That is it for that. Yep. Next thing, any questions? I know we've been answering them as we go with the chat, but does anybody have any other questions? You can unmute, ask it. But again, you can definitely email support at careerfinalfrontier.com, go to the website, all of our services. I just put it in the link again. But yeah, it's been great spending this time with you all.
Thank you, everyone, for spending your evening after the NPT with us. I know it can be hard. It was a lot of information, you had to do it all over again, just a couple of days ago, you were studying for your boards. But I'm sure that this was the better part of it, the after part of it, that hopefully was helpful. If you have any questions, reach out to us through our email, look at our website. We do offer a lot of support in terms of all of these services that we talked about today. And hopefully that we can help you out to land a great job, to land a great interview. Katie and Amanda are our instructors. So if you want to learn about a specific thing or talk to one of the specific mentors, then we can connect you with them. Thank you and have a good night, everybody.